Why, hello. Happy Thursday and good morning, evening, or afternoon, wherever you guys are calling in from. My name is Tyler. I'm here from the Julius SFHQ here in our headquarters, here in our studio. Really excited for today's workshop. This is our bi-weekly workshop that we generally do. Every Thursday for the last several weeks we've been doing these. Really excited to talk through some of the different features that have been shipped by the Julius team. Today's workshop, we're going to talk a little bit about all the different models that have came out since the last time that we've chatted. I think the last time we've talked, there was probably 4 different models coming out from the AI labs, from Muse Spark to Grok 4.5 to most recently Opus 5 and Kimi K3, which was added just a few days ago. We'll talk through the different models, how they perform. We'll actually show you some really cool side-by-side comparisons. We'll talk through the different new features that the Julius team has shipped. The newest one coming out today is parallel tasks and parallel agents, something that I'll demonstrate for you guys, why it's useful, how you guys can use it. And then we'll talk about how you could use Julius to build some of these different artifacts and different sites that we've been talking about. How can you use all these different models, the different capabilities, and then use them to build something that, I don't know, hopefully you guys will be excited to share with either your team or your colleagues or whoever else might want to see it, you know. Before we get started, I'm going to go ahead and share with you guys the form here. If you guys already have a Julius account, or if you guys don't have one yet, go ahead and share with me your email address, and then after this workshop is over, I'll go ahead and add in all of the different, all of the credits that we mentioned, just to get you guys started. If you guys aren't familiar, all the work that you do with Julius is credit-based, so this should help give you guys even more of a head start, just as a thank you for joining today's workshop. So I'll share that here with y'all. With that being said, let's go and just dive right into it. Whether you guys are brand new to Julius or this is your returning viewer of our workshop series, I hope you'll walk away with something that's useful. As always, feel free to let me know any of the topics that you want covered in the next workshop, other use cases, maybe certain type of sites or different types of apps or different types of things that you're trying to make, and we can work through those together. Idea is that you guys can follow along and maybe learn a little bit something about Julius today. Cool, let me switch over my screen here. Like always, this is the Julius homepage. I'm going to turn down the music just a little bit more here. And you can see all the different models that we mentioned in the model selector here on the chat bar. 99% of the work that you're going to do is going to be on this chat page, and that's where we find most of our users spend the most time. We do not have access to the forum. Let me see here. Did I share it correctly? Let me see here. Let me see if I shared the right link here. Maybe I didn't share the right link. Let me see here. Yep, I did share the wrong link. Okay, try this guy out and let me know if you guys have access. Cool, so in the model selector, you'll see all the different models that we've added. And like always, we're always adding the latest models that are coming out. It's one of the benefits of just working with these labs and just doing early reviews of the models, seeing how they perform, testing them out, seeing if the models actually perform well in what we call like the Julius harness. Basically, all the different tools that we've built, capabilities that Julius can do the models actually make it better or worse for our users, right? All of those are going to be visible in the model selector here. And then what you'll see is if you click on general models, all of the other additional ones that we've added as well. I'll expand my screen just a little bit. We'll have to add in a little bit of a scroll bar here. This used to just be 3 different models, but you can see there's so many new folks who have entered like this landscape. We have Meta coming out with Muse Spark recently. We had Grok coming out with Grok 4.5, so that's SpaceX AI. And then most recently we had Kimi K3 coming out too. So I think the big highlight here, if you guys aren't too deep in the space, is that we try to give users the most flexibility when it comes to whatever type of work that they're trying to do, right? Some companies out there, I think, will just give you a specific model. They'll maybe say like, hey, this is the one that we'll give you. If you pay, you get a better one. We've taken the second type of approach, which is just give the models to the users, let them figure it out. Comes with some pros and cons, right? I think the cons are if you aren't sure which models to use, it can be kind of overwhelming. But the pros is you get a lot more control over the capabilities of the model that you're using. You could have more control over how fast you use your credits, like I mentioned before. And even specific models are better at performing in certain areas from what we've seen. And I'll try to demonstrate that today in some of our use cases. But from what we've seen, some models are good at writing, some are good at coding tasks, some are better at things like the front end tasks, things that you'll see on the screen, UX, UI, and stuff. Others are good at the back end stuff, so writing the actual code. So we'll demonstrate all of that today. But the key thing I'm trying to take away here is you guys can try out all the models if you want. We try to give you as much control as possible. So actually, let's kick it off today. Let's start out with the newest model, Kimi K3. This was something that was recently added, was it 2 days ago? Newest model, I think a lot of the things that came out, at least in the marketing material and from people trying it, including the Julius team, is that it's really capable, right? It's up there with some of the higher level models like Opus, for example, or even GPT 5.5, right? But what we'll show off today is what it can do in Julius. So let's create a presentation about, let's say, what's something that was in the news recently. Let's create a presentation about, I think I saw a stock was up today. Oh, it's Microsoft, right? Microsoft. The history of Microsoft. First, let's do some research. Then let's gather some relevant images. And third, let's have it build the actual presentation. And we'll let that cook. So this is one of the things here, and you'll actually see we gave it a list of things that we wanted to do. And then Kimi actually does what a lot of models have been able to do. It thinks through the prompt, thinks through what it needs to do, looks at all the different tools in its toolbox that Julius provides, from our browser tool to the presentation making tool to even the search tool that we have. And here you can see it's actually using one of those right now. It's using the search tool, right? And this is one of the things that we always test whenever we're testing new models. Before we even add it for the general Julius user base, we see, hey, does it actually perform well, or does it just consume credits without doing anything, right? I think the ideal thing is if it adds a lot of value, gives users even more control or even more choices in what they can choose to power the Julius tasks, right? So we'll let that cook up. The cool thing, and this is something that we released today, what I mentioned earlier, is parallel agents, right? Parallel agents give us the opportunity to do something that Julius has never been able to do, which is run multiple chats in parallel, right? Might be wondering, why is that useful? Well, imagine if you were able to get another Julius running. So what I'll do here is click on New Task. We'll actually choose a different model this time. I'll show you guys maybe Grok 4.5. Same prompt. I want to see what Grok does. And we could actually run both of these at the same time. This is the one way that I've been using the parallel agents the most, which is just, hey, I want to try using the same prompt across different models, test how they perform, see if it's even, which one's better. I think that's the easiest way to test it out, is just use the same exact prompt, same exact use case, and see which one is a little bit better in the Julius harness. But the cool thing here is that you could actually do this now. You could just use multiple different parallel agents from what we see, and then you don't have to worry about your chats being interrupted or you only being able to have one conversation at a time, right? So if you have been using Julius for a while, you'll know that, hey, if I started a new conversation, it would end the old chat, or if you ever lost connection, it would actually stop your task from running. In this case, now we've added in a lot more support in the back end, all the stuff under the hood that'll help with running multiple tasks at the same time. This is one of the use cases, but I'll show off some of the different ways that you could use this in your workflows, whether that's marketing work, operations work, or even finance work, or if you're just building something, if you're building a website. It really is helpful to have multiple agents, especially when you use different models and you know which models are good at doing which tasks. We could have it run in parallel just to get things either done faster, but also just more effectively too. All right, so let's check in on Kimi, right? So we started the Kimi task over here, the second one. And we see that it's going through, it's searching through some of these sources that it has, looking for basically information about Microsoft. And it's just basically just doing all of the research first. And then now it looks like it's going to download the images for the presentation. We'll also take a look at Grok too. This is an interesting one. So now it's actually did some research, has a timeline of facts, and now it's generating images, which is kind of interesting. I don't know who's supposed to be who in this picture. But it's an interesting way that you could sort of see, like, hey, Kimi didn't actually use the generate image tool. Maybe it'll gather the images itself, and we'll actually check on it here. Making presentations has been one of my favorite things to do recently. I think a lot of the presentation tools out there that you could use, whether it's building slide decks from scratch with Google Slides or even PowerPoint, to using an AI tool like Gamma or some of the other folks out there in the space. I've used all of those tools. I think one of the things that our users are starting to see is it doesn't just start at making the deck, right? Imagine if you just stared at a blank piece of paper without doing any research first or needing to gather the images like what we're doing here, right? The cool thing that I think is pretty valuable is we're able to do all of those different steps before we even make the presentation, right? So it's not just making the presentation for you, it's everything that goes into it as well. And that's what I think is pretty useful in our presentation making flow. All right, check back in on Grok here, and then you can see some of the images that it's making up. This is one of the things where we could be a little bit more specific in our prompt if I want it to just gather actual images versus generating ones. If I'm going to be presenting this, generally I won't want to use generated images, at least of real people. So if this is supposed to be like Bill Gates, for example, and Paul Allen, probably wouldn't use it, right? But things like this, I think is just for defining the time, could be useful. But I could also be more specific about it just gathering the actual images too. This is your first Julius workshop, and your company uses Julius daily for many things. Can you give me a quick overview of the Julius models versus Kimi, for example, right? So yeah, we have other models available here. So if you want to just leave it to the Julius team to be like, hey, we know at this point for using this many credits, this model is best, use the Julius models, right? And it's a mix of all of the different providers that we have, whether it's Anthropic, OpenAI, even SpaceX AI, and also Meta too, right? It depends on the use case, but we try to simplify it a bit for users, right? And in reality, a lot of folks who use Julius on the daily don't really mind which model they use. At the end, they just really have the same sort of undeserved need. It's the need to just make something, right? The tool that they use, whether it's the models that they select, isn't really as relevant as long as they get the output, right? So if you're not too concerned about which models you're using, you want to think about it less, feel free to just use the Julius models. It is just a mix of different providers that we have, versus if you were to select a specific model too. That was Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak. Okay, that's what I thought. I wasn't sure, right? I think it's one of those things where it's AI generated enough where I didn't want to assume. I'm assuming because they're in a garage, right? And they're building the PC, the computer there, but it's interesting. We could clarify it like, hey, just don't generate images of the founders, but we'll see what it can cook up here. I think it's kind of interesting. Yeah. But yeah, there's no stupid questions. If there's, we host these every week. So if there's other questions that you have or other use cases that might be helpful, let me know. Here to help. Let's check in on Kimi as well and see what's going on. Okay, so here we go. So it actually went and downloaded the actual images too. So this is a little bit of a different approach to this, right? I think the first time it was gathering the search and doing some research. Then it tried to look at things like the Wikimedia API and stuff. And then finally it found out like, hey, I could use a browser. I'm able to download things. So it gathered actual images throughout. Steve Ballmer here and Satya Nadella here as well. Okay, cool. I'm going to double check and I'm just going to say, can you continue? Let's start building the presentation. I'm going to make sure that I had Kimi selected here as well. The other sort of one that we'll do in parallel, that's kind of related to this, is using Julius to actually build sites and build desktops. I think one of my favorite go-to tasks is just having it rebuild something that you know how it should look, right? I think if you have an idea of how the thing should work or what it should look like or different ways that you should be able to interact with it, I think those are always great benchmarks to do because it sort of is a litmus test, right? It helps you see like, hey, across the board, can it give you something that you've been able to either create before or have consistent results in whatever it is you're making. And I'll demonstrate that a little bit further in the workshop. But here we go. We have Kimi. It knows that, hey, Julius has the ability to create slides. It has a slide skill. It looked at the financial data tool. So I think one thing that's relevant to public companies is how much they're valued, right? So it's using our financial data sets tool as well. And then now it's going to build up the slide presentation as well. It's cool, over here in the right side panel, you can see all of the images it had gathered and any other content that Julius makes in the preview. But one other way that you could look at this is also in the files panel, and you could see all the individual things that were added, right? That's the cool thing about these parallel agents. They all have their own individual working sandbox, right? So all the different either files, like in this case, or images that it had gathered, research, JSONs, anything related to this specific task is all within its own conversation here. That used to not be the case. We used to have the stuff all over from all of your previous conversations within the same sandbox. And you can imagine us splitting those out helps with performance, results, and even the quality of things, because Julius is less likely to get confused about which file to use or use the wrong source, for example. We'll check out this guy here. So this is interesting. So this is Grok's version, right? I think this first one I started was Kimi, and the second one was Grok. So it looks like Grok was able to do it in just one single prompt, right? It was able to gather the data. It used the internet searching skill, built a timeline. We saw it generate all of the images. And then it was able to put together this presentation here, and we'll actually take a look at it too. Here we have all the decks, and all of them are interactive by default. You could just use the scroll keys. I'm not sure if it was, this is where I would tell it, like, hey, just don't generate images, use the actual stuff. But I guess in some cases, if you're just talking about the general history of a company, maybe it is okay to use, I don't know, generated images are okay, as long as it's not as wonky. This is from my childhood. I definitely remember using some of these older PCs. And I'll show some of the different tests that I do to help recreate some of this nostalgia, but it's kind of cool. It kind of fits in a little bit. Reminds me of those, when you used to buy, back when you used to buy software at the store, like Best Buy or somewhere, or even, what was it, Circuit City, for example. It would have images of folks using the computer just like this, which I think is pretty funny. All these different ways. The Xbox, that's right, Microsoft, yeah, brought the Xbox to life. Then they went deep into cloud when cloud infrastructure started becoming a thing. And Satya Nadella and things like that. Overall, I would give this deck maybe like a 7 out of 10, right? I think the formatting, in my opinion, is okay. I think the worst thing is, the biggest thing that prevents me from wanting to share decks that are AI generated is if they look AI generated, right? I've tried some and they look wonky from some of these other folks. Like I had one where it generated a picture of a person with 3 arms. Some of those, it gets you a good starting point, but you'll have to do a lot of work. In this case, this is pretty decent. One thing I wish was that it had more images, especially the ones, like we're telling this history of a company, right? There should be plenty of public images out there to use. Like the Satya Nadella slide should have a picture of Satya Nadella if I was going to present it, right? And most slide decks that I like to present, or that I find at least engaging, are ones that are actually more image than words, right? The last thing I want to do in a presentation is read off of a slide, right? I think that's the other part that you could give feedback on. But overall, it's something that if you just needed a plain rough draft, you could just start with this. And the cool thing is you could just publish this as well, or you could even export it to PPTX if you wanted to do the final touches yourself. But overall, 7 out of 10. For Grok itself, I would say this is actually not bad for just one single prompt, right? So that's where we'll stop on this guy, and we'll come back to this one. We'll take a look at what Kimi's doing here. All right, so Kimi, on the other hand, used the search tool the same way, built the timeline, and then here it actually gathered images. And this is where I would say, like, hey, I wanted Grok to do this rather than generate ones, right? See, this is the exact one I would have wanted it to use. That's an actual picture of like Paul Allen and Bill Gates, right? Let's go ahead and check out this presentation. And already, I like how it generated this. It's the Windows logo, the Microsoft logo. From a basic startup, same sort of slide template or like sort of style, you could say. And this is good. So this here actually uses like 2 images on one slide. It has actual young, young Bill Gates and Paul Allen. Can you imagine back then? And then the MITS Altair. This is before my time. I think my dad might have had some of these at his company. I remember these. I remember my parents used to have a flower company, and they used to have some of these big, giant computers that were all the green text. Some of the Costco's in the US will have these as well still. They'll have at least the green sort of processors as well. Cool, and then they shipped Windows. So the first Windows OS. And you can see this is a little bit more engaging because it actually has the actual images. Blue screen of death, that's kind of interesting to show. The Windows XP, the most enduring release of the era. It's not really a relevant caption here. I would have rather had like the iconic Windows XP desktop, for example. Picture of the actual the Xbox. The one that we had before, I think from Grok, looked more like a PlayStation controller. Okay, this is an all right slide. I would have wished it was like, you know, grab some logos or something from this and just make it more image-based, I think. Actually, an image of Satya Nadella, which is interesting. So when they're going into the cloud era. That's a Microsoft data center. I would never have thought. It doesn't even look like it's in the US from what that looks like. And then, yeah, all the different acquisitions. I think this is actually more engaging, right? So it just shows a little bit more of the history besides just like Microsoft in general, platforms, etc. One cheat code that I like to do, right, is publish the artifacts, especially when you have slides that you are looking to present. This one looks okay, but I'm imagining Julius wanted to do something different here. But my favorite thing to do is actually just publish these artifacts and just share it back with Julius and say, hey, take a look, see if you can refine this, add more images, right? And then what Julius will actually do is what we do as humans. We look at the slide decks just like we were doing, going through slide by slide, critiquing them. And you can actually see this here in the browser. Julius will load up the presentation and review it. Right? Why use this versus just having a look at the code is because some things might seem fine in the code from the way it generates it and places the headlines or the titles or the subtitles, right? But when you actually look at the deck through a browser, it looks completely different. So we'll see that here too. It's one of my favorite things to do. Cool. I'm going to take a look at the chat here. Are the Julius models? Okay, I think I answered that one. What's my favorite model in Julius? It depends on what I'm trying to do, right? For presentations and things like that, I like to use GPT 5.5, and then also Muse Spark is not bad, right? I tend not to use things like Opus or Fable. It just seems a little too overkill, especially when we're just trying to do basic things like build a slide deck and do research, right? For things like games, and I'll show this in the next one, one of my favorite benchmarks to do. I like to use 4.5 like Grok, but also Kimi was actually doing all right on some of those as well. But here we see Julius actually taking a look at the deck, especially when there's times where there's components that are overlapping, for example, or text that's truncated by the edge of the window, things that you wouldn't be able to just see from looking at the code. Julius is able to take a look and just QA the deck. And it doesn't consume that many credits because it's just reviewing it. It's not making that many big changes. It's actually just using the browser tool, which I find is very helpful. Awesome. I mentioned publishing. If you guys aren't familiar, publishing is the easiest way that you can go about sharing something that you've made. We find hundreds of users every day are just publishing presentations, videos, images that they're creating in Julius. So I shared it earlier. You can just create links here. And the cool thing is you can actually edit this entire site. So if I wanted to just make this like the history of Microsoft V1, I could save this, and then I could share that exact URL to use anywhere that I go. And you can just share it on Slack, you can share it on your socials, anywhere that you want someone to take a look at this. The other cool thing is as you iterate on the deck, it'll be the same link that you could use. So you could just edit the same presentation, iterate on it over time. You'll have that custom Julius site to use whenever you want it. Other cool hidden feature I feel like a lot of people don't know is you could earn credits for sharing things, right? If anyone views your artifacts and just, hey, I want to make this, you can just click on this link, they could sign up, and then you'll earn free credits. You'll both earn free credits when they sign up. There. Cool. If you're just joining us, I'm going to go ahead and share the link to the Typeform again. again, this is just free credits. I always get a lot of folks saying like, hey, I love joining the workshop. How can I get more? The easiest way is just share your link here. Did I share the right one? I did. Then you can use this. We'll add it right afterwards. 1,000 credits can actually get you quite far in Julius. In fact, this whole conversation, let's take a look here. Account settings, if I look at my usage, that was only, it looks like the first Kimi one was 193 credits, and then the second one with Grok was 231 credits. So you could make like 5 presentations with Julius from that. Your team does advanced statistical analysis and model evaluation. And we typically use Julius models mainly. Oh, nice. That's good. Julius Max or Ultra. That's good. It depends on what you're trying to do. You know, if you really need some more firepower, what I usually tell users is use the higher capability models, right? It makes sense. The one thing I would avoid is if you're doing basic tasks like just editing a spreadsheet, or if you're just making basic images, you don't need to use like the most capable models in the world for that. You're okay just using things like Julius 1.2 Lite or even Muse Spark, which I think is a completely underrated model for what value you get. It'll consume credits way slower. You'll just get pretty decent outputs as well. What about generating graphical abstracts and edit afterwards? Yeah, totally can do that too, right? So if it's specifically for this guy, the cool thing here is if I told Julius to edit like the coloring, right? Say I wanted to show this, can you make a quick edit to the presentation, change the theme to be green, like Windows XP? It doesn't need to regenerate the whole entire presentation. We actually have this one small patch tool, which will just edit the specific file. So that way you can just make really slight changes. If there's small tweaks that you want to make without regenerating the whole thing, there's no need to waste that extra work. And yeah, you can, I think if you're just saying in general to make like something very, you know, like make an image, for example, and edit it, you could totally do that too. I think some of the best results that you get for video generation in Julius start with a really good high quality image, right? So actually try that. Let me try it here in a new one. We'll say, we'll use Kimi here. We'll say, can you create an image of, oh, my favorite video, Bill Gates jumping over a chair. There was a famous interview he did back in the 90s where he did this to show. I can't remember. Yeah, it was some interview with this reporter, and she's like, "Hey, anything interesting that you could do?" And he's like, "Oh, I could jump over a chair from a standing position." It's one of the earliest, yeah, one with Connie Chung. All right, let's see if it's able to do it. But yeah, you could just create images and generate the edits as well. Biggest challenge has been running out of container size and memory. This is really good to know. It's improved somewhat recently, but we are working with big data, sometimes upwards of 5 gigabytes. We've spent a lot of time recently, especially working on improving our sandboxes. I think a lot of users, at least like 95%, are actually in the opposite boat. They can get away with just using 1 gigabyte, and most users actually never go above like 500 megs, which is kind of surprising. A lot of people are just doing basic tasks like editing spreadsheets, right? But we know from seeing and monitoring the errors that some users do need a little bit more firing power. I'll share that with the team, and then we'll follow up. I think it's good to know that there's folks out there that need more firepower there, and then we could follow up there. With over 1 gigabyte, you have to be really smart with your prompts. It's good to know. I use AI for advanced physics research and writing. How can Julius be leveraged for this sort of application, right? For both of those, right? So imagine you have to do your own either white paper or you're writing your own publication, right? All of the work that you would normally do, like gathering sources, looking for, I've spent a lot of time working through a lot of these like scholarly and going through the other like academic publications out there. If there's any of that manual work that you need to do or specific sites that you need to explore, Julius can do all of that for you, right? If it's just gathering research examples or even just finding public data that's out there, that's one of the use cases that we're seeing users do, especially if it's like just using a browser and accessing public data. The other cool thing is if you do need like a login for some of those sites, like I know Scholarly and some of the other ones require just a free account, you could sign in with Julius and then it'll browse and find whatever it is that you're looking for, at least to start with the baseline. The other folks that we see, if it's actually building models or if it's doing the actual research itself, that's one thing, but presenting the information is one other way that we found a lot of people that are working in the academic space have been using Julius, right? One of my favorite ones that we saw was when we released the video tool. We all thought that people would just be making like videos like I'm about to make here, right? But we had one person that was working in like biomed, and they were doing a paper on chemical reactions. I'm terrible at chemistry, right? But what they used Julius to do was, let's see if I could recreate it here. Make a video showing a chemical reaction between like sodium and some other element. And I'll show you this guy. And what they were doing was explaining like how these chemical reactions and how some of the, again, I'm not any chemistry buff, but how some of these reactions happen and how like the ionic things and the different bonds are shown. But it was able to create something just like that, which is really, really cool. Things that you normally would either have to look for a video of the reaction or look for some, publisher out there that makes a video of this specific thing. Julius can actually recreate all of those. It's all just prompts, right? But that could be another interesting way is if you're trying to present your information or your research in a specific way that might be more helpful for users to view, like in a video format, Julius is able to do that too. But the world really, the limitation really is your imagination at this point from what we're seeing from how the models are performing. I'll go back to this one and I'll just say, all right, let's animate it, show us him jumping over the chair from a standing position. We can see even just that subconsciously, I'm just using two different chats at the same time. I can't believe it's like we had this missing from Julius for so long. But give it a try and let us know what you think. Short segue into just joining our community Slack. It's a great place for feedback, like the one you just mentioned about containers running out of RAM, for example, or memory. If you just join our community Slack here, great place for you to first introduce yourself, but also if there's any feedback that you guys have, whether it's containers not having enough size or if you have questions about use cases, great place to just reach out to here. And especially if you're running into issues, we had one bug report happening recently. We'll follow up shortly and then make sure it's resolved there too. It's a great place for us to just hear from you and just learn a little bit more about what you're trying to work on. Okay, this isn't exactly what I meant. This is a prompting issue. Okay, I'm gonna reprompt it. I'll say, can you just show me on a molecular level how this happens? This is where you can just see how prompting is really important. But in this case, I don't know what that was. That was more of a Spider-Man presentation. Let me just try this one out and just see if this helps. But this is the one that was sort of eye-opening. It's like there's actual use cases for video outside of just making funny videos or just making entertaining videos. You can actually create educational content from what we've seen. So we'll try this guy out, and we'll see this other one from Bill Gates jumping over the chair. Great video, you guys haven't seen it. Okay, that is not as accurate, but if I were to add that to the presentation, that could be a great, maybe a great background image for one of our slides or something. But yeah, it's pretty cool. I think one of the best ways, again, to use the video generating is actually start with an image, especially just creating an image in Julius, which has been pretty cool. Cool. One last look through these. If I have a subscription, do I need credits? You do need credits, right? So the benefit of the subscription is you get access to a lot of these models. But the other thing is you get free daily credits too. I think that's the most underrated feature of having a subscription. Every account, even the free ones, get free daily credits. We just want people to just try to use Julius and just see what they can get out of the product. But if you do subscribe, you get even more free daily credits, right? Not to be a salesperson here, but even our free, our plus plan here, which is only $20 a month, you actually get 3,000 credits throughout the month, which is crazy. I think we see users coming in on the plus plan, and then they'll just come back every single day just to really get the most out of it. You'll get the entire 2,000 credits right away, but then you also get 3,000 credits over the span of the month, which I think is pretty useful from what we're seeing from users at least starting out with that plan. But again, all free plans get free credits as well, so you don't have to subscribe. Cool. We'll pivot this. Okay, now first let's check out this guy. Okay, that's one way of showing it. And then on the, see, this is where I could have used this in high school. I would have probably gotten a better grade in chemistry, just understanding how things like sodium and things have positive and negative charges. It's not something that I was really great at. But you can see it does have some way to show this, especially when you go into some of the more complex like chemical reactions. It was an interesting way just to create an animation just like this. Awesome, let's pivot. Let's try something different, right? And this is one of my other favorite tests, which is the Windows 98 test. If you remember that era just like I do, one of my fondest memories was playing Minesweeper, not Minecraft, I almost said, on the Windows 98. When I was bored at my parents' work and I had nothing else to do, this is before they had things like Instagram and TikTok. My favorite thing is just telling the models, and we'll try out two different ones here. We'll try out the Claude Opus 5. I'll just say, can you create for me the most realistic Windows 98 desktop that you can? I want to be able to play Minesweeper and Ski Run. Try to make this as realistic to the real thing as possible. Use the same icons, sounds, and interactions that you would have seen on Windows 98. Right, nice little segue. The other cool thing here is you could select the reasoning level. That's another way that you could sort of control the, I guess, like how in-depth Julius goes in thinking through what it needs to do, right? Don't always need to do max. I think that's one common mistake for a lot of new folks is they'll subscribe right away and then just turn the model on all the way to like 11 out of 10, and it's just like, you don't really need to do that. In fact, I find myself generally just sticking to like medium, for example. I think there is a point where the model tends to overthink the task and it gets a little bit more in the way of itself. From at least my own experience. Let me know if you guys experience this yourselves. But we'll just ship this on Opus 5 medium. And we'll do the same thing on a new task here. We'll try out the competitor in the same space. We'll do GPT 5.6 Sol on medium thinking and see how they both do. You would like the opportunity to promote this platform? Be our guest. You know, I think there's plenty of ways that you can get out there to share at least what Julius is capable of doing, and it's partially what Julius is capable of doing, but also how these models perform, right? I think that's the other thing is just like people want to know what AI can do and like what are some of the tools that can get them what they need to make what they need, right? If you want to get involved, share what you're making. I think that's the easiest way. Again, we follow every single post that mentions Julius. If you create something that's useful, I think that's the best way to sort of illustrate what AI is capable of doing. Build a presentation with AI, build a presentation with Julius, and just share it on your socials. Make it, publish it. You'll get credits for every single person that signs up with your link. They don't need to subscribe, but if they do, you'll earn even more credits. And then we'll follow up. We'll add more credits to your account if we see like, hey, this one artifact's getting a lot of views. It's a win-win for everybody just to sort of show what Julius is capable of doing out there. Yeah, but anyways, this is one of the tests that I run consistently. If I wanted to see like how a model can do, this is one of the holistic ways that I try to do it, right? It's useful in a couple ways. It's good at just thinking through and planning what's the best way for it to go about doing this. It's a pretty complex task if you actually think about it. A lot of different ways that it can get lost in making the Windows 98 desktop. For those of you who don't know, this is what it typically looks like. It was just a really basic guy like, I guess these are all good examples like this, right? Areas that I commonly see things stumble, and this is where you could really tell the difference between the models, is how much they redact away information from just doing a basic task. And that means like using the wrong icons. It's a way to break the illusion, if you will. Or interactions, right? Some of them will have the loading thing, some of them will have the volume icon from what I've seen. I'll actually share some of these in the community Slack afterwards, some of the ones that I've tried out. And you can actually create all of these with all the different models and just publish them too and just show. I've seen some that are able to generate the background and the display properties, which is really interesting. It's a lot of depth. but even different variations of things like the Minesweeper game, right? Pretty simple premise, right? But you'll be able to see the different attention to details and things that it'll miss in some of those that we'll probably see when the prompts are done here. All right, so I had GPT 5.6 do this one, right? I'm actually going to label this. I think one thing we'll have to address is the toggle not persisting. But I'll update this guy. This is Windows 98 GPT 5.6 Sol. And I'll rename this one here. This is Windows 98 Opus 5. Right. And this is where I do see a big difference in some of the models too. And this goes back to what I was talking about on the reasoning. Opus can run pretty slow from what I've been seeing recently, especially when the thinking is up too much. Sometimes it just walks in circles and it just contradicts itself, and that's sometimes why I just don't even turn on the thinking level. And that's why I've been just using GPT 5.6 here. So let's take a look and just see what you guys think, right? So that right there, you don't see all models do, right? And if you missed it, I'll reload it one more time. Not all models will create the loading screen. That's an interesting sort of first level detail. I don't know if it's a good thing or bad thing, right? If it does create a Minesweeper that's not okay, then I would have rather it spent a lot of time just on this. But this is, again, just one prompt. So this is okay, right? This isn't pretty realistic. I think just the way that it looks is kind of off. The squares are too big. Small details like this. It's good that it actually does the little O emoji. Sometimes they don't do that just to show like when you're actually interacting, right? Good that it got a timer up. It has the ability to control the sound but not toggle it. And then the other thing I like to do is click on the start menu, right? This left bar is pretty accurate, but the things that just look off are the icons that it used here. And then some graphical mistakes like this, right? But again, this is all just one prompt, right? It's just one way to show what Julius is capable of doing. And you'll see this is actually all just one HTML file that we see here too. But again, this is kind of just one take on this. And the other one, I'm not going to publish this just yet, is the other folders that it has, right? So Notepad, that's a pretty easy one. I think most of them are pretty good at doing this one, where it just acts like a regular Notepad. But things like Ski Run, this is just kind of okay. It got this one wrong pretty poorly. I have seen where if you do the thinking level really high, right, it tends to work a little bit better at getting some of the details. Like in this example, if you're not familiar, we should be going downhill, not uphill, right? Kind of doesn't make sense why you would be skiing upwards. But I like this one just because it's a simple enough prompt and a good test just to see how in depth it'll go at doing some of the stuff. So in here, you can't even click some of these icons, which I think is okay. The main thing I wanted to do was the Minesweeper. It's okay. I would give this probably like a 5 out of 10, to be honest. Let's take a look at what Opus is doing, if it's even close to being done here. Again, you can just see it's really struggling. We'll try one more out. In the meantime, we'll just do the same exact prompt. Let me grab this guy. Do a new one, and then this one we'll do, I'll show you guys Muse Spark. And this is where I like to paint the difference of just using really cost-effective models versus ones that are way overkill and you don't really see a big enough delta in the results. We'll try extra high. I'll just show you guys what this looks like. And just so I don't lose track, I'll rename this guy Muse Spark. And while we're at it, we'll do one more. We'll do Kimi too. Again, I can't get enough of these parallel agents. The thing we would see with users is they'll do a prompt and then just kind of sit there and then just like click around, because what are you supposed to do while you wait? Makes so much sense to just have in the ability for you to start up another task or work on something in parallel too. So let me try this guy out with Kimi. And let me rename it too so I don't get lost. I'll publish all these afterwards. 98 Kimi. So one thing that you can see right away is how fast the thing goes. I think this is the part that gets me, is like for some of these smaller, quote unquote, smaller models, the ones that are more cost effective, they know how to move, which I think is great. Opus, I honestly can't tell you what's happening right now. It looks like it's still just running through these steps. I'm close to just stopping it and telling it like what's going on, but I'm just gonna let it cook. Muse Spark, same thing. It's going through, and it's interesting. It did some research to understand what would it take to actually do a realistic Windows 98. And same with Kimi. It's actually just going through and planning out exactly what it needs to do. Julius does this all the time, right? So we're always evaluating how models perform, and we're working on ways to just evaluate across everything that users tend to use Julius for. So from data analysis and data science, which is our bread and butter, to making presentations, we love to see how models perform across the same exact task, right? Of course, like the biggest reason why we do that, just to make sure that the models are going to perform first, and then second, that they actually provide decent value to users too. If you haven't already, follow our socials like our X and also LinkedIn. We're going to come out with some benchmarks in the short term that just show like how these models perform, especially in Julius. Answers the age-old question that we get from all the users, which is like, hey, what model should I use, or which one's better, or which one should I even be using for this task? Well, the easiest way that we could show you is doing sort of what we're doing right now, which is using the same exact prompt, same use case for the same model. Except if just doing it for one task, we do it for hundreds of tasks or hundreds of different problems too. Nice, you find Julius when trying to find AI that's good with Excel, when you need data. That's great to hear. If there's any specific use cases that, would be even more helpful for you for your Excel task, let us know, Again, I would say, yeah, Excel is one of Julius's bread and butters out there. And I think a lot of users who came to us with the Excel use case of like, hey, I didn't want to fumble with formulas, or I didn't want to do pivot tables or charts. They then went from doing their analysis to like, okay, I need to present this now, right? A lot of times your spreadsheet just doesn't stop at a spreadsheet. It ends with you needing to share insights or share findings. And that's sort of why we've sort of tried to make different outlets for ways that you could share those insights too. But yeah, join the community Slack or just let us know in emails. Team@julius.ai is a great place if you guys have feedback for different feature requests or what's working, what's not working. The team would love to hear it. All right, look at this. So this is 100% better. I think it's interesting that some models are more willing to, at least it didn't steal these icons per se, but it generated actual images of these, which I think is really, really smart. Some models will be like, hey, I can't do that. It's copyright. I don't want to generate the images. I'm like, it's not the point. I'm not trying to resell Windows 98 at any point. It's just trying to illustrate this, and it looks like if it generates the image of the icons, it gets a lot more accurate results versus trying to look for an actual library. So it's interesting that Muse Spark had done this, which I think these icons look pretty accurate from what I've seen, at least from my own nostalgic memory of the Windows 98. Opus 5, again, still going through it, and then Kimi, let's take a look over here what it's doing. Looks like it's trying to run it all as one step. I'm not sure exactly what it's trying to do here. We'll take a look. We're still working out the kinks and everything with Kimi. We just added it a few days ago. We're partnering with US provider Framework, I think was the name. Or is that completely not true? Let me double check. Firework was the one, right? Let me double check that before. Yeah, Fireworks AI. Yeah, not Framework. Framework's the laptop company, but. We partner with them to bring this model, and I think it has a lot of buzz around it right now because you get a lot of performance for the cost, which I think is kind of interesting. And that's a lot of the big questions from users is like, what can the model do? And then second, how many tokens does it actually use, right? Finally, if there's anything else that you guys are curious about, whether it's features that we're working on or how you can get the most out of Julius, outside of joining our community Slack and checking out workshops like this and our YouTube channel, which has all our previous workshops, you can check out our documentation. We're always in the process of updating this. The latest, if you have any questions about how credits are used or the way that different models perform, the docs is a great place that you can go to. Secondly, you could also just ask Julius, which is kind of interesting, and Julius will reference our documentation too for any questions that you might have. Okay, it looks like Opus has gotten to the end here. Let's see if it was worth the wait. Again, the big thing about some of these models is how many credits they consume, right? So if I look at Opus, for example, I guess we'll have to wait for it to finish generating, but Opus will use a lot of credits, and it might start to like plateau out or round out at the end. You might not see like 10x the amount of difference. We'll have to see here. 10x the amount of difference for 10x the amount of tokens, right? And that's where you could really see some of the trade-offs too. It's interesting some of the different ways here. All right, so Muse Spark is just about to be done. Opus is almost done from what we were saying, and we'll check out Kimi. So this one I would say is a fail already. I could sort of see it from this image here. I'm not sure why it's using the Windows 98 Windows XP background. So it's sort of fumbled here a little bit. Icons are on point, but it used the Windows XP background for whatever reason. Start menu, reading through this. This is okay, right? So again, this is a pretty low score on my book. This is it getting confused with the task. It should have been Windows 98, which is the typical teal browser or teal background that you'll see. Minesweeper, the icons are really good, so I would say this is all right for icons, but again, it doesn't really matter if it's that. This is pretty bad. So this is not the same at all. From what you've seen, you can see the same interactions, but it doesn't make sense why the difficulty would be here. From my own memory, this difficulty settings would be in the game settings menu that you would see over here. It is cool that you have different difficulties, which is interesting, but it looks like it, even then, it kind of fumbled here because it's the grid is kind of messed up. So, Kimi efficient on some of the tokens, right? But the output here is kind of okay. It's not okay. It's kind of like mid, I would say. The beginner looks fine because it's self-contained, but again, it's kind of truncated here. This doesn't make any sense. The start menu, it's kind of all broken icons here, so you can see it's not really the best. And you can't even expand it from clicking on it, which is kind of okay. So I would rate this one. Stack ranking it compared to the GPT 5.6 one. GPT 5.6 wins, of course, in this one. Shutdown. I've seen some of them do this, create a blue screen of death on shutdown. This is okay. It actually got it going down and then the mouse. So it looks like it spent quite a bit of time on the ski game. But again, it's kind of truncated here on the bottom. So it kind of breaks the illusion. But the biggest thing was the Windows XP background. I don't know why it used the Windows XP background here. All right, and then let's take a look at Opus, if it's even close to being ready. And it looks like now it's starting to iterate on it a little bit. And then Kimi, let's see what it's doing. And it's still going through one giant task here, going through the thinking. We might have just finished that guy up. So it's okay, I would say. But again, I think that's where you start to see the models really differ here. And even, this was even on extra high for Muse Spark. But I'll share the feedback here. The one thing I caught is the model doesn't change, and that's why I label the tasks there. So this one's okay on generating the icons. Maybe that's a good thing that we could put into the prompts is like, hey, generate the actual icons if that gets you a better result. But it completely missed the mark on the background. Opus, on the other hand, it's still cooking, and I'm not sure what it's really doing right now. Let's see what it's able to do. And then Kimi is thinking through it. Right. But I'll post all of these in the community Slack afterwards. I'll publish them all for you guys to try out. And just let me know your guys' thoughts and other sort of tasks that you could use. Benchmarks are good if they have a really consistent output, right? So in this case, we know what we're looking for. And I would say I don't really expect any of these to one-shot them. I think there are some models that are probably capable of doing it. I think, again, GPT 5.6 is probably the best shot at one-shotting it, especially on extra high thinking. But for some of these, it's better to iterate on it, but I'll just share from just doing just the one-off prompt example. All right. As always, feel free to first put in your email addresses onto the type form. Again, we're not going to follow you up with any marketing stuff. It's just to give you guys more credits. Second, if you guys want to let me know what other topics you guys want to talk about in the next workshops, open ears. We're always looking to make these relevant for any use cases that are out there. Third, we'll do a Spanish-speaking one. It's been several months since we've done one, but if you are, I know you had mentioned Brazil's not Spanish-speaking, but for any other folks out there that would like to learn a little bit more in a different language, I know that Julius has a worldwide user base. We'll do one of those in our upcoming ones. And you can subscribe to our Luma and also our YouTube just to see when the upcoming workshops are, but we always send out announcements like we did for this one in the upper left-hand corner if you're looking for more. Thank you guys so much for joining today's workshop. Hope you guys can take away something useful here. Look forward to the credits in your account. And then I'll share these examples in our community Slack once they're done cooking up. I don't want you guys to have to wait for Opus to finish baking whatever cake it's baking right now. And then we'll see you guys in the next workshop. But thanks again for joining, and we'll see you guys later. Bye.